All right, we've arrived at the final chapter of Unit 3. Um, so first we talked about market structures or the way businesses compete with each other. Then we talked about how businesses can be organized from the point of view of the owner. Now we're going to talk about employment or people that actually work for the businesses. This graph shows a general trend in the U.S. economy. We've moved from being predominantly a manufacturing economy to a service economy. The graph shows good producing jobs have experienced a slight decline in recent years, while service producing jobs have increased dramatically. What this means for you is that you're more likely to get a job in the service sector than in a manufacturing job. Now we're going to move on to the notes. First, we're going to start out with some quick vocab. First thing you need to know is that employers are defined as people who demand labor. These are people who want to buy labor. Demand is always associated with consuming, with buying things. And so employers demand labor. They're going to buy labor from people. Employees, on the other hand, are people who sell their labor. So employees are the producers in this when it comes to employment. Employees are producers. They sell their labor to employers. The last thing you need to know is wage rate. The wage rate is, if you think back to supply and demand, the wage rate is where the supply curve and the demand curve meet to produce equilibrium. Equilibrium is where the wage rate is set. That's how much you get paid, how much a person gets paid for a certain job. Now we're going to continue thinking back about supply and demand and how this affects how much people get paid as employees. Now remember that the supply curve for labor is upward sloping, which means that workers are more likely to take a job if they're going to get paid more. And they're less likely to take a job if they're going to get paid less. This seems obvious, but it's all going to come together here in a second. It's an important review. The demand curve for labor is downward sloping, which means employers are more willing and able to hire workers at a lower wage rate and less likely to hire workers at a higher wage rate. So employees want to get paid more, want to get paid as much as they can get paid, while employers want to pay employees as little as possible. Now, if we continue with our application of supply and demand, we come to surpluses and shortages. So if we have a labor surplus, which means we have too many people willing to do a job, it's going to put downward pressure on price, the price of labor, which is wage rates. So if there are a lot of people who are willing and able to do a job, then the job will pay less. It's the exact opposite for jobs that have a labor shortage. And so if there are only a few people who can do a job, then it puts upward pressure on a wage rate. If companies can't find somebody to do something, then they're more likely to pay them more money. This is why unskilled jobs generally pay less, because there are many people who could do those jobs. And why skilled jobs, or where you need specific education or training, pay more, is because there are only so many people who can actually do those jobs. Now, there are two things that make people, that allow people to get paid more. One is education and training. Like I said, if you have a very specialized field that only a few people can do, you're going to get paid more because there isn't a surplus of labor in that field. There's a shortage of labor, and so it pushes price up on your labor. The other thing is experience and productivity. If you have experience doing a job, if you've been doing it for years, employers will assume that you're more efficient and more effective at doing the job, and so they're more willing to pay you more money to do it. And then we need to talk about benefits to a job. You can get paid in two ways. One, there is monetary benefits, how much you get paid in money. And then the other is non-monetary benefits, which are things like vacation time, insurance, working conditions, hours that you would like, things like that. Those also contribute to whether somebody takes a job or doesn't take a job. This is just a graph showing that your lifetime earnings, so how much money you will make your entire life, and how it's affected by your education level. So like I said, the more education, the more specialized you are in a certain field, the more likely you're going to get paid more. And this is a graph that shows lifetime earnings. So if you have no high school diploma, you could look to earn $1 million in your entire life. With a high school diploma, it's like 1.2, so you make $200,000 more if you get a high school diploma. And it steadily increases from there up to a professional degree, where you're making more than 4 times as much as somebody with a high school degree or no degree at all. Similarly, if you look at unemployment rate, people with less than a high school degree are more likely to be unemployed than people who have a high school degree. That's the biggest difference between unemployment rate is between people who don't have a high school degree and people who do have a high school degree. It drops from 9% unemployment down to 5.7% unemployment, which is a pretty big jump. When you look at the difference between a bachelor's degree and a master's degree is 0.4%. And then the right side of the graph just re-illustrates that the more specialized you are, the more education you have, the more you're likely to get paid. And this is just a cool cartoon that I found. It shows that if you have a college degree, you have an easier time getting a good job because you can shoot from closer to the good jobs. If you have a high school degree, then it's a little bit harder. You have to make that half-court shot. And then finally, if you're a dropout, then you have to shoot the full court shot. And so it's much, much more difficult to get a good job.